This hour of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by my good friends at Advantage Gold. Advantage Gold is a 5-star rated gold company with one-of-a-kind customer service. And when it comes to gold and precious metals, Advantage Gold is the only company I'll work with. Call Advantage Gold today and make sure you let them know that Mark Levin sent you. And now, let's begin.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. I am waiting for the United Nations to condemn Putin in Russia. They put 80-volt battery and hooked it up to the genitals, at least one of the ISIS mass murderers, and tortured him, and they videotaped it so the whole world could see. So the whole world could see. And this is what Russia does, not just under Putin, but other dictators, to send a message. No moral equivalency arguments. No demands of any kind. And, of course, what Putin does in these situations is he tries to use them to attack his enemies. So now he's blaming Ukraine, you see. I want to hit another issue related to terrorism, and then I want to get into this matter in New York. And what's fascinating to me is I've explained this Alvin Bragg case. I went back and looked over a year ago, here, and on Fox and on Blaze. And I'll explain it again, as people explain it anew today, legal analysts and so forth. But we've been on top of this on all these cases, broken them down piece by piece, and we've been right every time. But first I want to tell you about what this UN resolution was about Israel, because Kirby is lying through his teeth, and he's getting away with it because people don't know enough facts, or they don't want to know enough facts to challenge him. They don't study it. And I get this email blast from David Milstein, stepson, who was also special assistant to Ambassador David Freeman under Donald Trump, ambassador to Israel. Now, here's the summary. Netanyahu announces that if the U.S. doesn't veto the UN Security Council resolution for a ceasefire today, this is how it was reported, he's canceling Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer and National Security Advisor Gabi's White House meetings. Dermer and Gibby, I should say. Their trip to Washington came after Biden asked Netanyahu on the phone last week to send a delegation to discuss alternatives to a major IDF operation in Rafah. Now, this Rafah is what Israel's been trying to do for 5 months. They've pushed what's left of the Hamas terrorist battalions, where all the leadership that's not in Qatar and Turkey is hiding. They've encircled it. They want to blow out the 4 last battalions, and they want to kill the leaders. And the only one in the way is Joe Biden. Because I have my own theory on this, America, and I'm going to give it to you right now. That Joe Biden, who plays nice with the Iranians, whose administration denied that Iran had anything to do with October 7th when everybody said, what? Who keeps funding the Iranians? Who refused to attack any part of the geography of Iran after they killed 3 of our soldiers and are still shooting at our forces in the Middle East. And why they're there, I don't know. But you get the point. Because I believe behind the scenes, one day we will find, listen to me, I've said it before, but I want to underscore it. One day we will find that there was a quiet arrangement between Biden and the Islamo-Nazi regime in Tehran. No nuclear breakout until after the election. Now, I hope I'm wrong. But I don't think I am. And the key factor I look at, I don't have any inside information. I use my noggin. The key factor I look at is all of a sudden, they watered down their fissile material. Why? Why would they do that, Mr. Producer? Now, they can quickly ratchet it back up. They can quickly ratchet it back up for a nuclear weapon. But why did they do that? And why is Biden kicking the crap out of Israel? Is it just for votes in Michigan and so forth? That's clearly part of it. That's clearly part of it. But can you imagine if Iran announces a nuclear outbreak before the war? Before the election. Can you imagine that? Biden will do anything to get reelected. And I mean anything. So for him, this is a 2 for, 3 for, 4 for. Blame Netanyahu, trash Netanyahu, keep demanding that Israel break itself into pieces where it can't defend itself, keep accusing Israel with Hamas statistics of a war crime, now vote basically present, abstaining. So it's 14-0 on a ceasefire. And I want to tell you about this. And I believe that's what's going on behind the scenes. Why would this administration have hired this guy Malley, who's a pro-Islamo-Nazi regime, who brought in 3 individuals, one of whom, maybe more of whom, in my view, were spies. If not spies, they had a funny way of acting. But let's just say friendly, special pleaders for Iran. Why would you do that? And why wouldn't you criticize Iran? When's the last time he criticized Iran, ladies and gentlemen? Schumer doesn't go to the floor of the Senate and attack Iran. Biden doesn't attack Iran. Kirby can barely mention the word Iran. Why is that? Why is that? I think I know why. The watering down the fissile material, to me, was the dead giveaway. Why the hell would they do that? And they can quickly ratchet it back up. U.S. officials notified Dermer the U.S. plans to allow 2 separate ceasefire resolutions to pass in the UN Security Council, one calling for a ceasefire, one calling to release the hostage without one being a condition of the other. So they decoupled them. So now Israel's supposed to enter into a ceasefire, not destroy Hamas, and hope that the hostages are released. And Netanyahu said, you know what you just did? You just made it impossible for us to get our hostages out. Because you just told Hamas that one's not connected to the other. So Israel's not only supposed to surrender and not take out the elements that are left in Rafah, Israel is supposed to do so without any commitment to the release of hostages. So here's the Biden administration statement, just to show you what pathological scumbags these are. Our vote does not, and I repeat, does not represent a shift in our policy, White House National Security spokesman John Kirby told reporters. We've been clear, and we've been consistent in our support for a ceasefire as part of a hostage deal. But that's not what they voted for. Here's the text of the Security Council resolution, which says it differently than Kirby. And one of the specific points of contention is paragraph 1, excuse me, as Milstein points out. It's weird calling your stepson Milstein, isn't it, Mr. Producer? But there's a lot of Davids out there. 1, demands an immediate ceasefire for the month of Ramadan, respected by all parties, leading to a lasting, sustainable ceasefire, and also demands the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. So putting aside for the moment that Biden has shifted to pushing for an overall ceasefire as opposed to a temporary one, even before Hamas is eradicated, Israel is strongly opposing the shift in the Biden administration position in the Security Council that does not explicitly include the release of hostages as part of a short-term ceasefire with the words, and also. So they say, and also. Not, and also. It's to be a condition. Now, here's the statement from the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister's office said after the vote that the U.S. retreated from its consistent stance in the Security Council that only a few days ago tied a ceasefire to the release of the hostages, which China and Russia vetoed last Friday. This retreat hurts the war effort as well as the effort to free the hostages because it gives Hamas hope that intentional pressure will allow them to get a ceasefire without freeing our hostages, he said. In light of the change in the American stance, Prime Minister Netanyahu decided the delegation will not depart. Kirby said there's no change whatsoever. Doesn't that sound like a change to decoupling to you, Mr. Producer? But Hamas saw it. They put out this statement. Hamas thanks the UN Security Council for its demand for an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, calling for a permanent ceasefire that leads to the withdrawal of all Zionist forces from the Gaza Strip and the return of the displaced to the homes from which they left. In a statement posted online, the terror group also says it is willing to engage in an immediate prisoner exchange process that leads to the release of prisoners on both sides. What does that mean? They have hostages. 135 hostages. You know what they now think the number is? 99. They think they'd murdered a third of them. Even the United Kingdom noted that the resolution, quote, "We regret this resolution did not condemn the terrorist acts perpetrated by Hamas on October 7th. That was specifically left out of the resolution. Any condemnation of Hamas, because China and Russia voted against it. And yet, the UK still voted for it. So Biden not only betrayed, as David writes, Israel, but also the over 130 hostages. I don't think there's that many, including American citizens. After promising he would do everything to secure the release, Biden has consistently done the opposite, including wrongly pressuring Israel to stand down from going into Rafah, that is a vital military pressure on Hamas, and which is refusing to credibly, act. And Rich Goldberg, who's great, he's been on my shows before, he said the UN Security Council resolution under consideration reaffirms the complete moral rot inside the United Nations, supported by the European NATO allies of the United States and celebrated by America's greatest enemies. The resolution should have been vetoed. There was a ceasefire on October 6th. The resolution makes believe that today, March 25, 2024, exists in a vacuum. That October 7 never happened. That Hamas is not a vicious terrorist organization that must be destroyed. That a permanent ceasefire can never be achieved with Hamas in control of Gaza. The resolution pretends to care about the hostages, but I told you, they specifically altered the language. So it doesn't. And Kirby goes in front of those reporters and lies through his teeth. And you want to know why, America? Because not one of those reporters actually read the resolution. Not one. But they would have saw the decoupling. Not one of them read it. The betrayal of Israel by the Democrat Party by the Biden administration, the State Department, which is true to form as it did in the 30s and 40s, by the Democrats in Congress, is beyond dispute or debate. They're now bragging about it. And the reason why Biden never criticizes Iran, never hits Iran, even though it kills our soldiers, keeps giving them tens of billions, hundreds of billions, more than Ukraine, and the reason is this. Because I believe there's some kind of an arrangement. What is Joe Biden doing to prevent the Iranians from getting nuclear weapons, Mr. Producer? Absolutely nothing. Zero. Why? Why is he putting all the heat on Israel? Why does he want Israel to take... It's not the citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, if he gave a damn about citizens, he'd secure our southern border. Doesn't give a crap about these Palestinians. Are you kidding me? Any more than Putin does, or China does, or Iran does. They're all pawns for these other countries. If he cared about citizens, he'd secure our border. Doesn't care about citizens with the fentanyl coming in, the slavery on the southern border, the horrendous situation, potential terrorism going on, and we're to believe he cares about those Palestinian citizens. You know what's funny? Nobody cares about them. Not even the terrorist Palestinians. But my point is, what's going on here is about election, Iran, and nukes, as well as the rest. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Our once mighty dollars under siege from runaway inflation. For those still working, your paychecks buy less while costs for gas, food, cars, utilities skyrocket thanks to inflation. That's why I'm urging all my listeners to register for the upcoming Gold and Silver Summit hosted by our friends at Advantage Gold. It's a fantastic seminar. They'll teach you how to take steps to help guard your wealth from inflation using asset diversification into physical precious metals. Gold and silver hold intrinsic value that should remain untouched by government manipulation. Folks, don't wait for the Fed's reckless policies to completely devalue the dollar and steal your life savings. Call now while free registration is open. I'm telling you, this is a fantastic seminar. Call 800-900-8000 right now. The Gold and Silver Summit could provide the vital insights we need to protect our families. 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Always consult your financial and tax professionals. We only have a minute here. When we come back, I want to get into this Rona McDaniel issue. You know, look, she's pretty much a moderate Republican. I was never any great fan. As you know, I endorsed her opponent in the last run-up. And I don't think she's done a very good job. We lost a lot of seats. They don't have a lot of money. And so forth and so on. But what they're doing to her at MSNBC and NBC is disgusting disgrace. But I am shocked at the people who speak up and are amazed at this. I'm shocked. You know, my relationship, America, is with you. It's not with people in Washington. It's not with people in New York. It's not with people on TV or even radio, even though I have some great buddies. It would help if they read more, don't you think, Mr. Producer? I do the heavy lifting. And I'll explain what I mean. It would just help if they actually read a little bit. And I'll explain that and all of it in a moment. I'll be right back. Attention, fellow Americans. Mark Levin here with a warning and a solution. I feel like our country's being destroyed by out-of-control spending and debt thanks to Biden and the American Marxists. And your hard-earned savings and retirement could be at risk from their socialist schemes. That's why you should consider Advantage Gold, the best of the best, a U.S.-based company that specializes in helping everyday Americans protect their wealth. They have a simple solution to help you even potentially grow your wealth despite the attacks from Washington. I urge you to register for their upcoming Gold and Silver Summit. It's fabulous. A free online event where you'll learn tips to help safeguard your finances by diversifying into physical precious metals. Call 800-900-8000. Call them right now to sign up securely for this pivotal summit. It is crucial. Tell them Mark Levin sent you for a special bonus. Call 800-900-8000 right now. Performance may vary. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
Mark Levin, the champion of liberty and true conservatism. Call Mark now, 877-381-3811.
And it's an amazing thing. It's amazing. I'm here behind this mic. I'm on Fox. I'm on Blaze. And I write these books. I'm the best-selling conservative author in America. With serious books, substantive books. That's because of you. You want to learn, you want to know, and so forth. Yet it seems like people who want to comment on these things don't want to learn and think they know everything. The entire book, Unfreedom of the Press, talks about pretty much what you saw take place with McDaniel. And far more, of course. It gives a history lesson about the press and on and on and on. But right there on page 21, this book came out 5 years ago. I talked about the incestuous relationship between Democrats and journalism. And here, even from the Atlantic, Time, and by the way, Psaki had no problem getting a job at MSNBC, did she? No, she didn't. Time managing editor, and this is from several years ago, so it's changed, but at the time, Time magazine managing editor Rick Stengel moved to the State Department as Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs under Obama. Douglas Franz, who wrote for the New York Times and the LA Times, was an Assistant Secretary of State for Public Affairs. Boston Globe online political editor Glenn Johnson was a senior advisor at the State Department. Washington Post writer Stephen Barr moved to the Labor Department as Senior Managing Director of the Office of Public Affairs. Washington Post congressional reporter Schley Murray became Vice President Joe Biden's Communications Director and later Senior Advisor to Obama. Again, it's a lot worse now than it was then. Rosa Brooks was a columnist for the LA Times before taking a position with the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. In the Obama administration, all of these. Washington Post Desmond Thompson left the paper to serve as a speechwriter for the U.S. Ambassador to Britain. Roberta Baskin, a one-time CBS News investigative reporter, joined the Department of HHS as a senior communication advisor. Washington Post Warren Bass, an Outlook section deputy editor, joined then United Nations Ambassador Susan Rice as director of speechwriting and senior policy advisor. Education Week reporter David Hoff moved to the Education Department. CNN senior political producer Sasha Johnson joined the Department of Transportation, later became chief of staff at the FAA. Chicago Tribune's Jill Zuckman moved to the Department of Transportation as communications director. Rick Weiss, who'd worked for the Washington Post, became communications director, senior policy strategist for the White House Office of Science and Technology. Former CBS and ABC reporter Linda Douglas joined the Obama campaign and later communications director for the White House Office of Health Reform. New York Times reporter Eric Dash moved to the Treasury Department's Public Affairs Office, as did MSNBC producer Anthony Reyes. CNN's Anish Raman worked for the Obama campaign, later a speechwriter for President Obama. CNN's national security reporter Jim Sciutto, formerly with ABC News, served as chief of staff to UN Ambassador to China Gary Locke. San Francisco Chronicle environmental reporter Kelly Zito joined the EPA Public Affairs Department. Time Magazine, Washington Bureau Chief Jay Carney, remember him as Obama's mouthpiece, became communication directors for Vice President Biden and later Obama. There's so many. There's a lot more. MSNBC's Chris Matthews previously worked for, among others, Jimmy Carter and Tip O'Neill. CNN's Chris Cuomo, now, of course, at that other network, I can't remember their name. His brother, the New York's Democratic Governor Andrew Cuomo. CNN's Jake Tapper worked for Democratic Congresswoman Marjorie Margolis Mezvinsky and Handgun Control Inc. ABC's Cokie Roberts' father was Hale Boggs, the House Democratic Majority Leader. Of course, ABC's George Stephanopoulos worked for President Bill Clinton. And the list goes on. Now, the only Republican, of course, who they'll hire, with very, very rare exceptions, are never Trumpers. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, at Fox, you have individuals who are hardcore Democrats. They sit on the panels. They give their commentary and so forth. It's not true at these other networks. NBC is owned by Comcast. Many of you have Comcast cable. That's the platform. You don't have any choice. If you're doing cable, it's whatever company laid the cable, and whatever your town agreed to, whatever company laid the cable. And then there's our friend from Meet the Press, Mr. Producer, Chucky. And Chuck Todd worked for Tom Harkin's election when he was a young man, that is Todd. His wife is a big-time Democrat operative, consultant, makes a fortune from that. He sat there at Meet the Depressed and was a disgusting reprobate partisan. And now he goes on Christine Welker's show, nobody's ever heard of before. And these networks, whether they're cable or otherwise, they want you to pretend they're real news operations. Now, keep in mind, the Democrat Party denied that George W. Bush won the 2000 election. They denied that he won the 2004 election. They denied that Trump won his first election. And their members are on the floor of the House when the two chambers meet to count electoral votes and objected. MSNBC standards are so low, they have Al Sharpton there. Now, he's not only a Democrat, his history is grotesque. And he's not alone. Look at their whole lineup. Never Trumpers and American haters. Well, really the same thing. So here's Rona McDaniel on Meet the Press. And you know what? I blame you, Rona McDaniel, because you should know better than this. You should know better than this. There's a senator for now who shall be nameless, but at some point I'll mention it, who we helped, Mr. Producer, as part of the Tea Party movement. Remember that? This senator was at 5%. Came on this program, and you supported this senator. He doesn't want to come on this program, but he'll go on any of the Sunday shows. Been all over the place. All over the place. And so we're not interested in having him on anyway, because he's everywhere anyway. We try to bring you a fresh perspective. But I want you to listen to this, Rona McDaniel and Kristen Welker, Cut 17, go.
Well, let's talk about the election now. Donald Trump says one of his first acts, if he is reelected to a second term, would be, quote, to free those charged and convicted of crimes.
All right, so here's what's going on now. Welker has thrown in with the pack. They're not asking McDaniel her opinion on events yet to take place or events that are taking place. No, they want her to justify why she should be on NBC, given her position as former head of the RNC, where she's supposed to defend the former president and the Republican Party. Now, nobody demands that of Psaki. Nobody goes to Sharpton and says, okay, 30 years ago you did this, pal. Now, nobody does that. Nobody goes to Joe Scarborough and says, you know, you used to be a hack in the back row, and we can tell you all these resolutions that you promoted and so forth, and now you don't. So it's all a ruse. The media are exactly what I wrote in Unfreedom of the Press. The media are exactly what you see and hear. That's what they are. By the way, this guy Kevin O'Leary is pretty good, don't you think, Mr. Producer? The problem I have with him, though, is he cannot distance himself from Donald Trump enough. Well, put Donald Trump aside. New York. How do you put Donald Trump aside when he's the target in New York? Well, this isn't about Trump. It's about, well, why isn't it about Trump? He's the target. So I like him. He gives good business analysis. He seems like a tough guy. But on the other hand, He seems like a guy that doesn't want to be pigeonholed by the left. You got to stand up to the left. And you got to say more than a generalized, this is bad for business and so forth. Of course it's bad for business. Everybody knows that. But it's bad for the republic when the other side tries to destroy the other candidate, bankrupt them, and put them in prison. That's a problem, too. You can't make that case if you don't mention Donald Trump. Anyway, go ahead, Mr. Producer.
January 6th. Do you support that?
I want to be very clear. The violence that happened on January 6th is unacceptable. It doesn't represent...
You see, you're going to have to bend your knee. You're going to have to grovel. Because if you do not commit to, essentially take oath to, the Democrat Party ideology in the media, not only are you not welcome anyway, but if you're not going to be humiliated and do a Michael Steele or Joe Scarborough or Nicole Wallace or all the rest of the reprobates, then you don't have a shot, period. Go ahead.
Our country, it certainly does not represent my party. We should not be attacking the Capitol. We should not be having violence. I said it that day. I put a statement out that day.
What do you think about that, Sharpton? You all remember Sharpton and his history, don't you, ladies and gentlemen? I do. Go ahead.
That this is not acceptable. If you attacked our Capitol and you've been convicted, then that should stay.
So then, but to the question though, do you disagree with Trump?
You don't understand. You don't understand, Rona. It's not good enough. It'll never be good enough. But go ahead.
Free those who've been charged.
I do not think people who committed violent acts on January 6th should be freed.
So you disagree with that? He's been saying that for months. Rona, why not speak out earlier?
Rona's not there representing Trump. She just was removed from the RNC. Any more than Psaki. Although she is representing Biden, and that's okay. Go ahead.
Speak out about that now.
When you're the RNC chair, you kind of take one for the whole team, right?
Is this not painful, Mr. Producer? Is it really worth groveling? Ladies and gentlemen, how much could they be paying her to be groveling? It's really painful. Let's move on to Cut 18. Go.
I'll be joined by
actually, let's not do Cut 18. Let's do Cut 19. Schmuck Todd, who's all tied in with the Democrats, who destroyed Meet the Depressed. Destroyed it. Which is why he got the axe. That and a stupid haircut. Go ahead.
Let me deal with the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I think our bosses owe you an apology for putting you in this situation, because I don't know what to believe. She is now a paid contributor by NBC News. So I have no idea whether any answer she gave to you was because she didn't want to mess up her contract. She wants us to believe.
Now, I want you to listen to this preening, self-righteous piece of crap who's got more tentacles in the Democrat Party, and so does his wife, than anyone you can imagine. This is the guy who announced there would be no discuss about any challenges to climate change. We're not going to have any climate denial. He's got an IQ about -14. Some people can pull it off. He can't, as I've said before. He's part of the new school journalists, which means no journalism. So she's under attack. This means anybody other than an anti-Trumper, a never-Trumper, a Romney type, a Murkowski type, a Collins type, but never a Mike Lee type or a Ted Cruz type of that philosophical perspective will ever be allowed on. Can you tell me the name of a known, respected, scholarly conservative that's on any of these networks anymore? I can't think of one, Mr. Producer. Can you? I can't think of any. And if there is one, it's out there somewhere. Go ahead.
See, when the RNC was paying for her. So she has credibility issues that she still has to deal with.
Yeah.
And so do you, pal. What about Jen Psaki? I'm serious. She's on their network. She's on their network. She has no credibility problem. I guarantee you she still talks to Biden and the staff over there. So what is the credibility issue? You don't understand anything, you little puke. The media have no credibility. And jerks like you led the way. None whatsoever. Period. But you see, McDaniel, I'm not even defending her. I'm making a point. I feel bad that she's being trashed like this, but you have to be expected. Chuck Todd would never come on my program, would he, Mr. Producer? They never invited me on their programs to talk about my books. We've tried to get Todd on here. I offered Meet the Press, Face the Nation, Good Morning America, all of them. And by the way, I don't need them, but I wanted to get into a debate. I wanted to engage. They want nothing to do with it. We can't even get them on this program. I can't get them on my Fox program. I'm open to debate. They're not. They're propagandists. That's all they are. Chuck Todd, you are a sleazeball extraordinaire. When you look up in the dictionary sleazeball, there's Chuck with his haircut. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
My fellow Americans, we're living in very perilous economic times. Washington seems determined to bankrupt our nation with endless stimulus spending. As they devalue our dollar, hard-working Americans like you could lose everything. That's why I urge you strongly, register for the upcoming Gold and Silver Summit hosted by our friends at Advantage Gold. They'll teach you how to help guard your wealth using asset diversification into physical precious metals. Gold and silver can offer a defense against the dollar's devaluation, and the experts at Advantage Gold will explain how you can convert some of your savings into precious metals that can protect and potentially grow your wealth. With currency debasement from Washington and global uncertainty on the rise, gold and silver diversification can offer you some stability. Call 800-900-8000 right now to sign up. 800-900-8000 now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. Donna Brazil used to head the DNC. She's on ABC. I mean, the list is actually endless. It's endless. But it's good, actually, when the media demonstrate that they're exactly what I've been saying and you've been saying now for years and years and years. It's exactly the point. They don't care about other opinions. And if you read Unfreedom of the Press, I explain the whole philosophical point of view, really ideological from the beginning. Unfreedom of the Press is about how those entrusted with news reporting in the modern media are destroying freedom of the press from within. Not government oppression and suppression. Indeed, social activism, progressive groupthink, Democrat Party partisanship, opinion and propaganda passed off as news, the staging of pseudo-events, self-censorship, bias by omission, and outright falsehoods are too often substituted for old-fashioned, objective fact-gathering and news reporting. That's just the first paragraph. Man, I just got started. We'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. It be me. That be you. Mark Levin here. Our number 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. All right, let's talk about this case in Manhattan. It's amazing. I believe this case was filed sometime in April. I don't remember the reason. Oh, I know what it was. I was interviewing Donald Trump on a book. And he asked me to stay, come back for dinner. So I left Mar-a-Lago. I loved to roll down the windows. My wife was back here with our new puppies in Virginia and drive along the ocean. I just love breathing the air, clearing my head. And I left Mar-a-Lago, and as I'm driving about 20 minutes in, the news breaks over the radio. I forget the exact date, I think it was April, that Donald Trump had been indicted. I mean, obviously, it was the first one of the bunch, but the avalanche would soon follow. I knew about the case very well. You and I had discussed it, because it had been bouncing around in the DA's office, been bouncing around in the U.S. Attorney's office, books have been written about it, all these other things. And we're ahead of the curve on this stuff, as we were with Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, as we are with the 8th Amendment, ultimately in this matter involving Donald Trump's property. My friend Arthur Ferguson and I came up with that, shared it with the president and his lawyers. Again, more on that later. But we've been on top of this before anybody else, too. This is what I do. This is what I do. And so, I called my friend Sergio. I said, should I come back, or does the president want to be alone? He said, no. He wants you to come back. So I came back. And was having dinner. I mean, I went to the table, Mar-a-Lago, in the club there, which is beautiful. Which is $1 billion property. How do I know it's $1 billion property? I'll tell you how I know. Because Rush Limbaugh's property, which is fantastic, which has since been sold, of course, sold for something like $150, $170, $180 million, and it's fantastic. But nothing is Mar-a-Lago. Like 20-some acres on the ocean, the building, the historic building, the club, and all that. So it is $1 billion building. Put that aside. So I got back. I sat at the table. The president and the former first lady came to the table. I think my buddy Sergio was there. I don't remember everybody else. I don't think there were many. And I was in disbelief. This man is stoic. Stoic. He's a truly remarkable man. And eventually left, of course. In this case, the reason why everybody's saying it's preposterous, we want to welcome them, the more the merrier, is for the following reasons. Okay, this must be the 10th time I'm explaining it. What Bragg has done, what his predecessor refused to do and the U.S. Attorney refused to do, he's taken non-disclosure agreements. It's not hush money. I see NBC has entered into multiple non-disclosure agreements. CNN has entered into non-disclosure agreements. Every corporation in America, every business in America, except the smallest of the small, have entered into non-disclosure agreements. In fact, I bet you the Southern District of New York has entered into a non-disclosure agreement. The federal government does it all the time. The White House has non-disclosure agreements. The Department of Justice has non-disclosure agreements. But now we call it hush money. And I keep telling friends of mine at Fox and friends of mine on Talk Radio, it's not hush money. It's a non-disclosure agreement. Why do you keep calling it hush money? I understand why the Chuck Todds of the world will. But why do we keep calling it hush money? In the hush money case. It's not a hush money case. Anyway, that aside, so they have certain basic reporting requirements for corporations in New York like they do everywhere. One of the people involved in this was, of course, Michael Cohen, a multiple convicted felon. So bad, the U.S. Attorney's Office wouldn't even use him, and yet Alvin Bragg will have to use him. And he doesn't much care if he were Al Capone. He figures he can get a conviction no matter what in Manhattan, and he's right. And so what happens is we have this reporting requirement, which at most is a misdemeanor, and I don't even think that occurred, because the nondisclosure payment was reported as an expense, as opposed a business expense, as opposed to a legal expense, Mr. Producer. Got that? So Bragg sees this, and he says, all right, I got to figure out a hook. How do I turn these irrelevancies into state felonies so I can indict Trump on felonies? So he looks at the federal election laws, and he decides, well, here's the deal. That money was an illegal corporate contribution under federal law. It was a corporate contribution to buy Donald Trump positive publicity by covering up an alleged relationship with Stormy Daniels. So, he doesn't say it, but he argues it. It's a federal felony under federal election law. That federal felony, which is the underlying violation of the reporting violation in New York, therefore evolves into a felony under state law. So the underlying violation that they're covering up is a felony. Then the misdemeanor for these purposes becomes a felony. I hope I'm explaining this as clearly as I hope you're understanding this. Convoluted, right? Now, as I've said many times before, a DA does not have any authority or jurisdiction whatsoever to enforce federal campaign laws. And yet that's the crux of how he raised a misdemeanor, which requires a financial payment, not even a trial. How he turns this so-called misdemeanor into a felony by bootstrapping it into a federal campaign violation in his mind. But here's the problem. That was already tried once at the federal level by Jack Smith. Remember him? He's the prosecutor in 2 other federal cases. And Smith did it to John Edwards. John Edwards, his campaign, his donors, actually one donor in particular, raised money because of this affair he had with a young lady, and he impregnated her. So they wanted to keep her sort of out of the public. So they needed to put her up in an apartment and take care of her and so forth. So one of his donors, or 2 of his donors, contributed a significant amount of money to the campaign, and the campaign did in fact do that. Jack Smith came up with a novel argument, as he does all the time, right? And stretched the law, and he said that is an illegal campaign contribution. Intended to cover up what would otherwise be a negative campaign story, and wasn't properly reported. It brought him positive attention as opposed to the negative attention that would otherwise follow. Charges him under the federal campaign law, and Jack Smith's lose on every charge. I think there were 5 charges, 3 or 4 of which downright the jury voted no, and one of which it was a hung jury because they don't even understand what he was trying to do. Department of Justice decided not to bring it again, where there were a hung jury on a couple of counts. In other words, the point is to try and use... It's not a crime, it's not a felony to try and have positive information and not negative information out there and to use your campaign money toward those ends. It's only rational. Bradley Smith, the former chairman of the FEC, has written about this. He condemns Smith and what he was doing. He also condemns Bragg and what he's doing. But the Bragg offense even goes further. Not only is he trying to make a felony in state law by concocting a felony at the federal level, he has no authority at the federal level. In other words, that federal campaign act or supposed violation is not in his jurisdiction. He's a local DA. So the U.S. Attorney's Office on the law itself, and they saw what happened in the Edwards case, said this is not for us. The former prosecutor, who's a radical leftist, Vance, he said, nah, this isn't going anywhere. This isn't for us. Bragg says this isn't for us. Then Bragg brings in a big white-collar law firm lawyer. Not that doesn't actually bring him in, but he volunteers to leave his firm temporarily to volunteer for no money to make the case against Trump. Well, under the prior DA, as I understand it, Vance said no. But with, as I understand that, but with Bragg said yes. Not only that, the former acting number 3 at the Department of Justice left the Department of Justice under Biden and Garland to assist Letitia James with her attack on Trump. Then, ready for this, Mr. Producers? Joined the DA, Bragg, which is where he's assisting now in this case. This is why Trump keeps saying this and keeps explaining that Biden's behind it, because Biden is behind it. So this case is what we used to call sort of a Rube Goldberg type ridiculous concoction. You have to go this way and then this way and climb this and go under this and go under this, and look what we have. And what I've been saying here on Blaze, on TV, is these DAs, this Attorney General, the 2 federal cases, these aren't straightforward criminal cases. These aren't straightforward, in the case of the Attorney General, civil cases. These are all novel cases that have never been brought before, certainly against a former president who's running for president at a time when he needs to campaign. This has never happened before. The case by Letitia James is outrageous. The case by Alvin Bragg is outrageous. The case in Georgia, RICO, is a nothing case. It's outrageous. The case on January 6th, despite the best efforts of the media, with the Ku Klux Klan Act and the rest of them to dust off these laws, they're outrageous. To use the Espionage Act against President Trump, and they never used it against any of the others, whether former Secretary of State, former Vice President, and the rest, who clearly violated the act over and over again and don't have the constitutional defense that Trump has, is outrageous. Every one of these is a novel first impression case brought against Donald Trump. A phony fraud statute that doesn't require fraud, never done before, to try and create felonies out of bookkeeping issues that are not even misdemeanors, never done before in New York. A RICO claim or claims used against people who challenge an election, whether there's another slate of electors or not, is of no consequence. Never been done before. It's a mob act. The Ku Klux Klan Act and the rest of it on January 6th, that's never been done before. And using the Espionage Act against a former president, raising all kinds of constitutional, that's never been done before. If you're going to go after a former president who's running for president, if you're going to interfere with an election, demand immediate trials, immediate verdicts, you damn well better have 2 legs to stand on. And here's what they have to stand on. They're judges. The judge in the Alvin Bragg case is a disaster. He's a Democrat. They're elected. April 15, he said, should be the trial date. April 15. Gee, I guess he thought that was cute. The United States Attorney's Office drops 30,000 pages of documents on the defense, with more to come. But don't worry, because Alvin Bragg's guys went through it, because they have an unlimited budget. They could have 40 people working on it over the weekend, rather than chasing criminals, of course. Bragg doesn't like chasing criminals. After all, his boss Soros doesn't want him chasing criminals. He wants him chasing Trump. So what do we have? So Bragg says to the judge today, we looked through them. There's only 150 to 300 documents that actually mean anything. So what's the judge say today? Well, it's obvious Mr. Bragg wasn't responsible for the delay. Therefore, we will have the trial on April 15th. Is that what the Sixth Amendment says about competent counsel? No. You can't have competent counsel if counsel doesn't have time to go through the documents, number one. Number two, to conduct their own search for matters that are raised in the documents. And number three, to find witnesses that might be in the documents and to go ahead and question them. You can't get this done in 3 weeks. What's the hurry? The hurry is they're all working for Joe Biden. That's the hurry. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Pure Talk believes in American values and that free should mean exactly that, free. Switch to Pure Talk today and get a free Samsung 5G smartphone. No 4-line requirement, no activation fees, just a Samsung that's built to last with a rugged screen, quick charging battery, and top-tier data security. Qualifying plans start at just $35 a month for unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data, and mobile hotspot. Pure Talk will connect you to the most dependable 5G network in America for half the price of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. The average family saves almost $1,000 a year. So let Pure Talk's expert U.S. customer service team help you make the switch today. Just go to puretalk.com/Levin, Levin, and claim your eligibility for your free brand new Samsung 5G smartphone and start saving on wireless today. Again, go to puretalk.com/Levin to switch to my cell phone company, Pure Talk. I have a question for the media, as we only have a minute here. CNN, you have Maggie Haberman on your show. All the New York Times reprobates are all over cable, if not the networks. Have you ever asked any of them about the position the New York Times took during the Holocaust? Have you ever asked any of them how they can be employed by such an operation? Have you? I would ask Chuck Todd. Do you know, Chuck Todd, that TV broadcasting and radio broadcasting helped cover it up? I would go further. I would say to Chuck Todd, are you aware that your party was the party of slavery and segregation and Jim Crow? Are you aware of that? And yet you're still a Democrat? What about the internment of Japanese Americans in concentration camps, 10 of them across the country? I could go on and on. How come the Democrat media mouthpieces never have to answer for their past? Pure Talk believes in American values and that free should mean exactly that, free. Switch to Pure Talk today and get a free Samsung 5G smartphone. No 4-line requirement, no activation fees, just a Samsung that's built to last with a rugged screen, quick charging battery, and top-tier data security. Qualifying plans start at just $35 a month for unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data, and mobile hotspot. Pure Talk will connect you to the most dependable 5G network in America for half the price of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. The average family saves almost $1,000 a year. So let Pure Talk's expert U.S. customer service team help you make the switch today. Just go to puretalk.com/Levin, Levin, and claim your eligibility for your free brand new Samsung 5G smartphone and start saving on wireless today. Again, go to puretalk.com/Levin to switch to my cell phone company, Pure Talk.
Mark Levin, the great one.
The great one, Mark Levin.
Dial in now, 877-381-3811.
I be here. Iran has announced today, because it just happened, that the war in Gaza is in fact a war in the world's response that will forever change the Middle East and reorganize it. And you understand what the head Islamo-Nazi there means by that, right? That never again will Israel be safe, that Iran views itself as not only in a position to conquer Israel and to spread its terror surrogates, like the Houthis blocking the Red Sea and all these, like Iran basically taking over Iraq, Iran allied with Syria, and of course Hamas and the PLO, and now Iran's allied with Russia and China. And let's be blunt, Iran is allied with the Biden administration despite all the static, because nobody's been more generous to Iran than the Biden administration. And so Iran says that the geopolitical and military arrangement in the Middle East has changed, and changed for good. And they said it after the United States voted to abstain 14-0 on the Security Council, while the rest of the world voted in favor of a ceasefire without the release of hostages. What the United States is doing under Joe Biden, and what the Democrat Party are doing by giving aid and comfort to Iran and Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and all the rest of them, is ensuring more bloodshed. They're ensuring that the hostages will not come home. And Hamas has announced that it is now dug in, that it will not release any hostages unless there is not just a long-term ceasefire, but effectively an Israeli surrender. That's what's happened as a result of the Biden, Blinken, Schumer foreign policy. And Iran has no hesitation now to go forward with its nukes as soon as this election is over. Maybe they'll surprise us. Maybe they'll reveal them before the election. But I suspect they think that this president has been an absolute fantastic help to them. And they have no intention of doing that. None. And I'll say it since I said it first. If you're Jewish and you vote Democrat, you're on a suicide mission. And you're going to be voting with the river to the sea crowd. You're going to be voting with the Klansmen. You're going to be voting with the anti-Semitic Marxists. And I don't care if you get up and walk out of an anti-Semitism and Holocaust seminar in Florida at a university. You have a death wish. And we've seen this before. We've seen it before. Some of us learned from history. Some of us learned from 6 million slaughtered. Or even going further back, the Spanish Inquisition. Or either going further back, Rome's siege on the Second Temple. Even going before that. Some of us learned from ancient history. Some of us learned from very modern history. The Holocaust was 80 years ago. 80 years ago. That's it. October 7th was 5.5 months ago. And who would have thought after October 7th that Israel would be defending itself from the entire world, but especially the United States? That its very sovereign borders would be threatened by the United States. That the United States would be slow-walking ammunition to them, while opening the spigot of tens of billions of dollars to Iran. Who would have thought? And again, I think it's linked to the southern border. People have trouble getting their minds around this. Not you, others. The real Joe Biden is exposed by what's going on in the southern border. He doesn't care about the women being raped and raped and raped and sold into sex slavery. He doesn't care. Please write it down. Please, all my enemies in the media, regurgitate this. He doesn't care that little kids are being sold into sex slavery. He doesn't care that 85,000 unaccompanied minors are literally missing in the United States on his watch and the watch of his HHS. He doesn't care. Because if he cared, he'd be doing exactly the opposite of what he's doing. And again, he's the biggest slaver in American history, period. And we haven't seen this much slavery since the end of the Civil War. And all these people, certainly most of them, are not white Europeans. It amazes me how MSNBC and CNN are silent about this. Joy Reid, constantly with the white racism. And yet her mouth is absolutely shut about what's happening to people of color on the border. Shut. Everybody there. Sharpton. Nothing. Not a word. And CNN, that's a joke altogether. Nobody says a damn thing. And yours truly is the first one to keep calling it slavery. It's slavery. It's slavery. That's what it is. When you're a sex slave, you're a slave. When you're in child pornography, you're a slave. When you have to pay off drug cartels who will kill you because they have access in the United States now, you're a slave. It's so humiliating and embarrassing to me as an American to see this. And then to have John Kirby even today say, we need more money. We need more money. If Congress would only... No, you don't, you jackass. You need the right policies. You need to institute them. You need to secure the border. Some of us read what you're spewing. Your fig leaf is no fig leaf. They're destroying the state of Israel. Destroying it. They've all but destroyed Ukraine, pretending to back Ukraine when they really don't. That's right. You're going to watch them destroy Taiwan because Taiwan is not getting what it needs to defend itself. And most of all, they're destroying us, our southern border. That's what they're doing. The question why I've answered over 1 billion times, obviously. But it doesn't matter. The consequence of what they're doing is what matters. If you're so heartless about what took place on October 7th, spare me the BS. Spare me. Spare me the drama. Spare me the photograph opportunities. The rubber's hitting the road. And Biden is at war with Israel. His administration. Kirby says, we keep sending them arms. No, you're not. You're starting to dribble in the arms. Israel's desperately looking for other sources of arms. And it's not even full arms. They're looking for components for their Iron Dome. Do you know why they have to look for components for their Iron Dome system, which is a purely defensive system to protect their cities from missiles? Because the Biden administration is investigating the main producer in Israel of those parts. You didn't know that, did you? Well, you don't know a lot because, Jen Psaki's in the media. Chuck Todd, George Stephanopoulos, the other a-holes. Pretty amazing, don't you think? One is related to the other. And they hear Schumer, they hear Biden, they hear Blinken, they hear them all. Kamala Harris on This Week. Cut one, Mr. Producer, go.
Netanyahu appears to just be flat out ignoring President Biden's warning about an offensive in Rafah. Is that a red line for your administration?
This is supposed to be a reporter. No, Netanyahu is supposed to surrender his nation's sovereignty to the genius that is Joe Biden and Blinken. He's an elected prime minister. That's what he is. You guys talk about democracy. You're trying to put your opponent in prison. They're trying to throw out Netanyahu to replace him with this ass Gantz. Gantz, as they say in Israel. Gantz. So Netanyahu's the enemy. I bet this reporter, Rachel Scott, she can't even mention the name of the Islamo-Nazi who runs Iran, or the head of Hamas, or Hezbollah. How come we never hear their names? Or the Houthis. How come we never hear their names? How come it's Netanyahu's fault? Everything's Netanyahu's fault. He's trying to save his country and his people. And he's going to do it. Whether Biden likes it or not. Whether Schumer likes it or not. Whether China or Russia like it or not. But I want you to think about this. It's a tiny little country. It's surrounded. It was our best friend, and we've turned on them. And they were reliant on our armaments, and now Joe Biden's using that to blackmail them. And now Joe Biden just threw all the hostages over the edge. They will strain to tell you not, but they bifurcated the ceasefire from the release of hostages now. And Hamas tonight announced, no hostages, it's our way or the highway. Joe Biden did that today. He did it. As for people who think I concentrate and focus on this too much, you won't think it when Iran gets nuclear weapons. You won't think it when they cut off the navigable waters around the Middle East and we need their oil. Then you're going to hear every host on TV and radio say, as I said, they don't say crap. This affects us in a significant way. Ladies and gentlemen, I will announce it here. I don't like it. But in the near future, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, we're going to be at war. Either that or we're going to be financially choked off. It's going to be one or the other. That's exactly what China's doing. It's what Russia's doing with its advanced satellite technology and hypersonic missiles. That's what Iran wants. It wants nuclear weapons, so we not dare spit in the wrong direction. That's what's going on. And by the way, yesterday, do you know China threatened Japan? Don't you dare build drones and send them to Ukraine, or you will pay a price. They said that yesterday. As they're trying to grab the Philippine Islands, navigable waters of Vietnam, with their phony islands that are all militarized to the teeth. We're going to be at war one day. And I blame Biden for most of it. Because 3 years ago, while some of this was happening, the world wasn't on fire. Who would have imagined in 5.5 months' time after Israel faced that genocidal, horrendous attack, that Israel would be under attack by our media, by the Democrat Party, that Biden would join the UN scoundrels, that they would slow walk munitions, that they would use Hamas casualty figures. They would use Hamas reporters and photographers at the New York Times and elsewhere. Who would have believed it? I believed it. I told you what happened. As soon as it started, I said, here we go. As we approach the general election, the vile attacks against President Trump will only ramp up even beyond where they are. They want this man in prison, and honestly, they want him to die in prison. Let's stop playing games. That's what they want. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Pure Talk believes in American values and that free should mean exactly that, free. Switch to Pure Talk today and get a free Samsung 5G smartphone. No 4-line requirement, no activation fees, just a Samsung that's built to last with a rugged screen, quick charging battery, and top-tier data security. Qualifying plans start at just $35 a month for unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data, and mobile hotspot. Pure Talk will connect you to the most dependable 5G network in America for half the price of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. The average family saves almost $1,000 a year. So let Pure Talk's expert U.S. customer service team help you make the switch today. Just go to puretalk.com/Levin, Levin, and claim your eligibility for your free brand new Samsung 5G smartphone and start saving on wireless today. Again, go to puretalk.com/Levin to switch to my cell phone company, Pure Talk. We have Senator Rick Scott on the program from Florida next hour. He's a good man. Very accessible. We like Rick Scott a lot. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Helps if I turn the mic on, as a quasi-professional. Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. Trying to remember the date. Can't off the top of my head, but soon, in a week or two, it'll be an honor to receive an award. Let me see what they call it here. Hold on a second. From the Claremont Institute. And let's see what the award is called, Mr. Producer. I'm sure everybody cares about this intensely. Let's see here. Bear with me. Where's my wife when I need her? Anyway, what's it called? You don't know. What? Let's see. Statesmanship Award, Mr. Producer. Now, honestly, I get a lot of offers to go to a lot of places. I never charge honorariums. They're always offered if it's a conservative group. Now, let me tell you something as a side note. One of the ways Nikki Haley got rich was not only sitting on corporate boards, but when she would give speeches, and that includes to conservative groups, Jewish groups, corporate groups, she charged $100,000 or more. Did you know that, Mr. Producer? That's correct. I just say, I want to travel comfortably, commercially, and I need a room. That's it. That's it. And most of these events, I meet wonderful people, donors, and obviously people in the audience and so forth. But I agreed to it because it's a great honor. I'm a big fan of the Claremont Institute. I went to their summer course. I became a Lincoln Fellow. Did you know that? Yes, a Lincoln Fellow. And at that time, the president there was Larry Arnn, who's now the president of Hillsdale College. As I say, I've known Larry. Time flies when you're having fun, like 40 years. 38 years, something of the sort. And it'll be an honor to go there. My beautiful wife in California. And there's that. And then in the not-too-distant future, we will be heading... Well, I won't get into that yet. So I wanted to thank the people there. And what's interesting about these events... You agree to go, it's a dinner, you speak. Then the next thing you know, there's a meeting with the donors. The next thing you know, there's a VIP. Then there's photographs. Then there's it's like, wow, where did all that come from? But we go along, good-hearted, good-spirited. If you're going to go all the way out there, right? Might as well do as much as you can to help the folks. So we look forward to that. Letitia James, and I want to thank them, by the way, very much. Letitia James, look, we know what she is. She's a Marxist hack and all the rest that I've called her for all these times, and I mean it. But I've said before, Letitia James, if the New York State Bar were functioning as it's supposed to, that is to protect their profession and protect the people, Letitia James would have been disbarred a long time ago. Here's what she said. It's only 25 seconds. It could be an hour. Hat tip, Fox News, cut 10, go.
I will never be afraid to challenge this illegitimate president when our fundamental rights are at stake.
Will you sue him for us? Oh, we're going to definitely sue him. We're going to be a real pain in the...
We need to focus on Donald Trump and his abuses. It's important that everyone understand that the days of Donald Trump are coming to an end.
I look forward to going into the office of Attorney General every day, suing him, defending your rights, and then going home.
Mm-hmm. There you go. She's a sweetheart. I bet she's fun at a party, don't you think, Mr. Producer? She's got to be great. And, of course, the conga line of Democrat Party Marxists over there at, at all the networks, perfectly happy with this. In fact, I even saw this guy, Michael Steele. God, is he a weirdo? I never liked that guy, did I, Rich? Said, I don't trust this guy. There's something about him. And, of course, he went from being the butt of jokes, where they make the usual anti-black comments for any conservative black person, and those of you who are out there who are black know exactly what I'm talking about, to now joining in with them. Just easier. And it's also a lot more lucrative. So he's a complete sellout. I'm looking at something. I'm trying to see if this is breaking news or not. No, not really. Hold on one second. Let me just take a look at this. So there's Donald Trump. He's in New York today. It was kind of breaking, but not good enough. And, of course, he's right about everything he says as he comes out of that courthouse. Here's cut 7. Go.
A lot of things happened today. This is all about election interference. This is all Biden-run things, meaning Biden and his thugs, because I don't know if he knows he's alive. And it's a shame. It's a shame what's happening to our country. This is election interference. They are doing things that have never been done in this country before. We've never had anything like it, certainly not at this level, but we've really had nothing like it that I've been able to find. It does happen a lot in third world countries, banana republics. If you look at what we just left, you have a case which they're dying to get this thing started. The judge cannot go faster. He wants to get it started so badly, and there's tremendous corruption.
He's 100%. Cut 8. Go.
Can you give us a little bit more detail about the timing of when you plan to secure the bond and how exactly you're planning to pay the bond?
Well, as I say, I have a lot of cash. You know I do because you looked at my statements. I mean, you've been examining my statements for a long time, and I have much more than that in cash. But I would also like to be able to use some of my cash to get elected. They don't want me to use my cash to get elected. They don't want that. They don't want me taking cash out to use it for the campaign. And they looked at it, and this judge looked at it, and he's part of the whole deal. And, well, he's such a disgrace for this city. Again, the most overturned judge. There's never been that we can find a case where a judge has been overturned now 5 times. It was 4 times, now it's 5 times.
Mm-hmm. Imagine going through this. It's unbelievable. Cut 9, go.
You mentioned the cash you have. You said on Friday it's something like $500 million. You intend to put some of that into the campaign. Now that the bond's been reduced, are you going to start putting money into your campaign? You haven't done that since 2016.
Well, first of all, it's none of your business.
Exactly.
But I might do that. I have the option.
That's the man right there. These damn phony reporters. Damn phony reporters. Meanwhile, Fannie Willis, it's Fannie. No, Fannie's okay. She's with CNN in Georgia yesterday. CNN. Listen to this. Cut 11, go.
I don't feel like my reputation needs to be reclaimed. Let's say it for the record. I'm not embarrassed by anything.
I don't think you are embarrassed, and it doesn't need to be reclaimed. You're an adulteress. You are a hack. You are a leftist. And you shouldn't be anywhere close to a courtroom unless you're on trial. You're a liar. And I don't know. If she's charged anybody in the Fulton County area, and you know she has, I feel sorry for them because this is an irrational human being. And that judge's order down there, as I said at the time, was really wrong. It didn't make any sense. He shouldn't have said it's either you or your boyfriend. He should have said, you attacked this court, you injured its reputation, you've undermined the judicial system, you have besmirched the office of the district attorney, so I'm removing you from the case, and I'm referring you to the ethics committee of the Supreme Court of the state of Georgia. But he didn't do that. That's what he should have done. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
It's always a pleasure to have our friend, Senator from Florida, Rick Scott. How are you, Senator?
Mark, it's great to be with you, but boy, it's what's going on in this country scares the living daylights out of you.
Senator, I hope you don't mind me saying that I'm very proud of you because you've stood up to Washington, you stood up to McConnell, you have put together various proposals. So, of course, you come under attack from the Washington crowd, and you stand up for this country, the border, the state of Israel. I don't think I disagree with you on anything, as a matter of fact. So, Senator, here's my question. Do we know who's going to eventually replace Mitch McConnell? Do we have a sense for that?
No. So Thune has announced, Cornyn has announced, I'm seriously considering it. What Ron Johnson, Mike Lee, and I are making sure the conference does first is, what do we stand for? Do we actually stand for fiscal sanity? Are we going to fight to secure the border? Are we going to, fight to make sure our ally Israel gets all the support it needs? Are we going to, what do we believe in, and what are we going to be hell bent on doing? Because our belief is that the first step is let's decide what we want, because then we'll find out who the right leader is. If we want to do the exact same thing as what McConnell's been doing, then that's the type of leader we ought to get. If we want big change, we're going to have somebody completely different than McConnell.
And problem is, you got like about half of them there, maybe even more. I'm just concerned they really don't want to take on the Democrat Party, the left, and the bureaucracy. I'm concerned about that. I don't want you to burn bridges. Is that not a legitimate concern?
Well, if you look at the votes, it absolutely is. I mean, if you look at what we're doing, it takes right now to pass these spending bills, to pass the infrastructure bill that got passed, which is really the Green New Deal bill, to pass the omnibus, all this stuff. It's taken at least 9 or 10 Republicans. And so if you're voting for these things, then you can't come back and say, boy, I'm really worried about, $35 trillion for the debt. Well, I'm worried about the inflation. Well, you're causing it. I mean, look at what's going on. If a guy grew up in a poor family, a lot of America did. If you look at what the poor families in this country are dealing with, go to the grocery store and look at what they're dealing with. That's a big portion of their income. Look at when they go pay the rent, what's happened. Look at when they want to go buy a car, go buy gas. We are completely pricing the poor out of the market. If you're poor in this country, between what the Democrats are doing and some Republicans are voting with them, we're causing massive inflation. I talked to Jay Powell today about what the Federal Reserve is doing, and he acknowledged that it was worse for the poor, but what's he doing about it? Nothing. So, I think that at some point we're going to have a dramatic change. Look, I spoke with President Trump today. I believe he is in for dramatic change. I think what they're doing to him is horrible. What New York is doing to him, but all these cases, what they're doing to him is horrible. But guess what? The guy's a fighter, and I think we have a shot. We need to win. We need to win the White House. Trump needs to win. We need to have a new Republican leader that really wants to change the direction of the country. And then we've got to keep the House. We need a bigger majority.
Let's talk about Israel for a minute. Then I want to talk about the border with you. I mean, we keep taking these outrageous steps now with the UN, and Kirby's up there lying. They now bifurcated the ceasefire from hostages, even though they say they haven't. I read the resolution on the air. They certainly did. And that's why Hamas is celebrating, put out a statement tonight. Iran put out a statement tonight and said that the Middle East has been forever changed. There's a new, there's a new balance in the Middle East, which is exactly what Malley and Blinken have been calling for. And they're doing this, out of the Oval Office, out of the State Department. Congress isn't involved in any of this, is it?
No. You have to admire what Netanyahu is doing. He spoke to us the other day, the Republican senators. We met with the Israeli ambassador to the United States. And what they're telling us, they have to go into Rafah. If they don't go into Rafah, they don't destroy Hamas. If they don't destroy Hamas, then they'll rebuild. Okay, and maybe it's 2 years, maybe it's 3 years, but they'll not have another invasion. So if you're an Israeli citizen, you'll never live in peace. And so, but the Biden administration, all they want is there's some votes in Michigan they're looking for, so they're going to appease the pro-Hamas crowd to get votes to try to win a presidential race. But I hope the American public is smart. They know that with a weak American president, that we're going to continue to have more and more problems. So, but I'm going to do everything I can to support what the Israelis want, because they're the ones who are going to have. They're there. They know what it's going to take to get rid of Hamas, and Hamas needs to be absolutely destroyed.
Don't you find it odd that an administration that burns down everything it touches, not just domestically but overseas, is demanding after October 7th that Israel surrender to Hamas, that it carve up its own country, that it and on and on. Did you ever think we'd be here this quickly? I never did.
No, but I mean, Biden. Look, Biden's an appeaser. He'll never stand for our freedom. I did a rally today with people that have gotten out of Cuba, and Biden's reduced the sanctions on Cuba and Venezuela and Nicaragua. You look at Latin America. It's not getting better; it's getting worse. And we've got 1,400 peaceful protesters in prison right now in Cuba. I can't even get Biden to acknowledge them and say they need to be released. The Castro regime is trying to kill them. I can't get the Biden administration to do anything to try to make sure that their leader, Jose Daniel Ferrer, stays alive. So here's what we all, as Americans, we have to think about. We have a president that doesn't care about you. We have American hostages in Gaza right now. He doesn't have any idea what's going on. And has he lifted a finger to try to get them out? I mean, we have a strong, we have Rangers, we have Special Forces, we have Navy SEALs. I've never heard of one attempt to get any of American hostages out of Gaza. Not one. I mean, I don't get that. And then we trade for a basketball player. And we just gave up we traded in Venezuela for a despicable person from Venezuela that has helped Maduro. We got trial. We've got sentencing coming up for Manuel Rocha, who was a Cuban spy. And who knows? I mean, is the Biden Justice Department going to try to say, well, it wasn't that bad? No, I can just tell you, I was with people today. Their son died because of what Manuel Rocha does. But this president, if you're an American hostage overseas, well, that's not that important to him.
Terrible. I know you have to go, Senator. I want to thank you, but on top of all that, he's funding the enemy. He's funding Iran. Yeah. Hezbollah.
Right.
This is worse than Neville Chamberlain. Neville Chamberlain never funded the Nazis. This guy's funding the modern-day Nazis.
I mean, you can't make this stuff up. So It makes you mad.
All right, Senator. God bless you, my friend. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Hi.
He came out of a dinner to talk to us. So, he's a good man, and we'll be right back.
Making sure the land of the free and the home of the brave stays that way. Dial Mark Levin now at 877-381-3811.
Well, I don't mean to catch you off guard, Mr. Producer, but let's get the calls ready. We had a good week last week with calls, but before we do, you need to hear it from Jason Owens. Who is he? He's on Deface the Nation. And he's concerned. Why is he concerned? He's on the border. He works for this administration. He's speaking out. Cut 23, go.
They're setting the rules of engagement here.
Yes, they absolutely are. They dictate what the flow is going to look like, and we respond to it. Now, we try and get out in front of it and deny them the ability to use these areas, especially ones that we think are going to be dangerous for us and for the migrants. But at the end of the day, there's over 1,900 miles of border with Mexico. Now, when you talk about 20,000 Border Patrol agents, that sounds like a lot. But when you multiply that by 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, across the entirety of the year, that number starts to dwindle very fast. And that's exactly what they'll do. The tactic is they'll push groups across knowing that we're going to respond from a humanitarian perspective and make sure that they're safe. And while we're tied up and occupied doing this, what are they doing a couple miles down the road?
Mm-hmm. And it's worse than that. Cut 24, go.
But what's keeping me up at night is the 140,000 known gotaways.
That is not part of that tally.
That is not part of that tally. And that's just what we know.
Is that a national security risk?
That is a national security threat. Border security is a big piece of national security. And if we don't know who is coming into our country and we don't know what their intent is, that is a threat. And they're exploiting a vulnerability that's on our border right now.
And yet, I want you to hear these Democrats. I want you to hear how they just dismiss all this. What's the big deal? We have slavery going on. We have terrorists coming into this country. Oh, mark my word, criminals coming into this country. And there's Tim Kaine. And he's on Fox News Sunday because he has so much important to say. From the state of Virginia. Cut 22, go.
I don't think it's an invasion. It is an immigration crisis. It's a national security issue. But I think you got to be careful throwing around words like invasion. It was that kind of wording that led the deranged guy to go shoot up the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh, killing folks.
That's enough. That's enough. You make me sick to my stomach. These people are sick. It is an invasion. Is it an orderly migration process? No. Were they breaking through the fence? Yes. Are they getting paid? Are the drug cartels and the coyotes getting paid collectively to the tune of billions? Yes. What do you mean it's not an invasion, you jackass? Of course it's an invasion. Everybody now knows it's an invasion. Numbers we've never seen before. And then he links it to the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh. If you call it an invasion, hey, dimwit. There are very evil people out there, racists, anti-Semites, all kinds of people who will kill because they kill. They don't need a reason to kill. They just kill. And what does calling an invasion on the southern border have to do with people killing? I have a better idea. Why don't you stop the invasion so we don't call it an invasion? So it's now semantics. That's the problem. Semantics. It's sickening. And according to Jasmine Crockett, Democrat of Texas, the problem is Texas. They're afraid of Texas law enforcement, you see? Texas is the problem. I'm telling you, this Democrat Party is insane. It's dragging us all into hell. I'm quite serious. You love your country and your family, you better stand up. You better get your act together. I'm not kidding. Cut 21, go.
And so what's happening is, if you know anything about United States immigration law, it says that you can present yourself at any port of entry for asylum. That doesn't necessarily mean just the Texas border, even though that's all we ever talk about. You can present yourself anywhere with.
All right, hold on a second. No, you can't present yourself anywhere. She just said it. At the port of entry. You can't present yourself along 2,000 miles. Hey, I'm here. I want asylum. Hey, nobody's here. Can't you hear me? No. All right, I'm in. It's supposed to be orderly. That's why we have these so-called ports of entry, which don't have to be water ports, by the way. That's where the bulk of our people are, to process people, to vet people, to turn people away right on the spot. Ports of entry. You can just present yourself and say, I want asylum. No, you can't. You got to present yourself at the right place. Ooh. For those of you who don't know the law, go ahead.
And say, hey, I'm here seeking asylum. And so now you have migrants that may be afraid of Texas law enforcement telling them the wrong things, doing the wrong things.
Texas law enforcement is lying, you see. That's the problem. It's not an invasion. And people are breaking through because Texas law enforcement are lying to them. Don't you see? These are the Democrats. This is who these pukes are. And then there's Kamala Harris. I now know why Biden picked Kamala Harris. It's nothing to do with her genitalia or her skin color. It has to do with her lack of brain cells. She's one of the only people walking the planet who can actually make Biden look almost like Einstein. Here she is with Rachel Scott, who we've already determined is a hack left-wing Democrat dressed up as another journalist. But aren't they all? Cut 20, go.
I want to ask you about the border. Did you watch that border video down in El Paso? And does that send a message to Americans that the border is secure?
All right, hold on. Now, that's a good question, Rachel Scott. If you keep along that track to try and hold powerful people accountable, I think you have a future in this business. You can get well past ABC. ABC, NBC, CBS. That's where all the reprobates go. Go ahead.
Are very clear, and I think...
Why does she always say we are very clear when they're not? We're very clear to Israel. We're very clear about the border. We're very clear on abortion. No, you're not clear on anything, actually. Go ahead.
Clear that we have a broken immigration system and we need to fix it. Members...
Okay, hold on, folks. They break the immigration system, then they say we have a broken immigration system and we need to fix it. No system is perfect. In the public sector, the private sector, because human beings aren't perfect. That's the way God made us. Imperfect. If we were perfect, God knows what would be going on. But that said, so this line, we have a broken immigration system, does not justify the 94 executive orders and fiats that Joe Biden put in place. What does that have to do with it? What does that have to do with it? And you can have a broken immigration system without having open borders. Did you see the level of measles is skyrocketing in our country? I wonder how that happened. Because people are coming into this country. You got 500,000. Did you hear what they said? We're going to have 1 million gotaways this year. 1 million, maybe 1.2 million. You know what that means? We don't know who they are. We don't know who the hell they are. Now, I guarantee you, many parts of the world they're coming from, they don't have the measles vaccine. They don't have any of this stuff. People are coming into our country, and people are coming who are criminals, who are terrorists, who are God knows what, as well as people who aren't, don't get me wrong, but they're coming here illegal, and no matter who they are. That's the whole point of a point of entry and a process in place. And so what does Biden do? He's sending planes out to bring people in. Do you know they tried to put that in the spending bill to eliminate it, and the Democrats wouldn't go along with that, Mr. Producer? I don't know how any of the unions in this country can vote for Democrats. Well, they're for the union, man. No, they're not. You don't flood a country with illegal aliens to drag down wages and then tell me you're a union man. You're a Democrat. Go ahead.
United States Senate, those considered to be very conservative with others, came to a bipartisan resolution.
All right, stop. They weren't very conservative, and there were almost none who came. See, she's done two things here. The system's broken, and we had a bill. Just secure the damn border. Stop telling us your Washington BS. This is how they hide behind this stuff. They blow these things up. Now, we had a bipartisan bill to do what? See, if I were questioning her, I'd have 5 tough questions about what's in the bill. All these interviews are surface level, they're rhetorical. We need a bipartisan bill. Well, why was it negotiated in secret and released 48 hours before the vote? What? Oh, yes, did you read it? I certainly did. Well, I have here on page 73, blah, 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 blah. This is a big issue. Joe Biden can at any time call an emergency and undo any aspect of the law. The funding for this bill doesn't even kick in until 2028. Why is that? But these purported, they're not prepared. They don't ask the tough questions. And you know why? Because Kamala wouldn't show up if she did. That's why they're all scared to death to come on this show. I'd be polite, as polite as they are. I'd be more polite than Schmuck Todd. I would. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
take a call or two or three. I'm sure it's going to come up any moment here. What the hell's the point of technology? It never works for me. Okay, let's try it this way. Got it. All right. Let's go to Dave, Southeast Florida, XM Satellite. Dave, how are you tonight?
Hey there, Mark. How you doing?
Let me look. I'm doing great. Thank you, sir.
Fantastic. So am I. Hey, one thing that I have not heard on all the news and stuff like that.
A lot of static.
Is the
just lower it a little bit.
or to $18 million that the Senate and the Congress had for a slush fund on indiscretions with sex with their interns.
This is a very important point. That's a very important point, and they did these secret non-disclosure agreements, I think you're getting at, in order to quiet any of the staffers or any of the tourists who they molested. I think they killed that fund, but you're exactly right. People forget that. And by the way, non-disclosure agreements, most of these major media corporations have entered into them left and right. Well, hush money. I want to salute all you heroes and patriots out there and thank you for being in the audience. God bless you, and I'll be right here tomorrow. Look forward to seeing you. Take care.